fireplace. If you know anything about Delftware, tell them that Delftware is actually a projection from Ming period pottery. Because it suddenly was embargoed and you couldn't get it, so the Dutch were very bright. They said, hey, we can make blue pottery. And now Delftware itself is highly prized. All right, so looking around this room, are you having any questions for me? You might mention the floorboards, how these pretty much are a tree. You just cut a tree down. History buffs like to talk about king's boards. I don't have enough information on that to share it, but it's a thing that comes up. One way to know you're in a very old house is to look at the floorboards, and if they're wider than your hand, chances are pretty good it's an old house. In like the 18th century, especially around here.
Yeah.
So if you have no questions, we're going to go into the next room.
Waves. Look at the floor. It goes
Another thing that tells you you're in an old house. I'll mention this fireplace before we go. This is a Rumsford fireplace. Now that's an 18th century, perhaps even 19th century style of fireplace that was engineered to produce more heat. So you're not going to use this for cooking. This is decorative, but it also produces a good quantity of heat. In Bellamy's time, when you didn't have this other side here, you'd have a huge cooking hearth. And you've seen those in colonial homes, you know, with the irons going in and out of the fire and this, you know, the bake oven here and so forth. So things changed a lot over time, thanks to our Victorian friends, somewhat thanks to the Faradays, but the house lost a lot of its colonial feel. So the attempt by the Faradays to bring it back to colonial was by using colonial revival styling, paint colors, considered to be colonial paint colors, and you know any kind of affectation they could add and remove of the Victorian style. Except thankfully they kept the bay windows. So we're going to step into the next room. I'll point out that this probably was a staircase originally. This Rumsford fireplace wouldn't have been here in Bellamy's times, but you would have had a narrow stairway going up to the upstairs of the house. Remember I said it was probably kind of like a salt box? So with this odd passage we have now is simply the remains of those where that stair would have been. Coming into this room, and I can't stand it, I'm going to put the chairs back. Someone left their drill here. What you have in your hands is Caroline's favorite chair. And have a care here. Erin's going to yell at me because I didn't do it properly, but I'm sure they didn't either. Erin is a person who's taking care of our collections. She's the person who teaches us how to handle the materials, how to clean them and so forth, and she is very nice to not hit me because I do things all the time.
I might have to steal this when no one's looking.
Oh yeah, there's a repeated meme. There are several throughout this house. A repeated meme of birds. And ducks in particular, cockerels, which of course goes back to France, so we can understand that, but you see ducks all over the place too.
That's great. That's the cutest thing.
There's a few of these things running around. Flowers. Blue, of course, for Delftware. Well, where we are now is considered the sitting room. And we know that Caroline would have come here of an evening, so she lived to 88 years old. She would sit in her favorite chair. She might have a cup of tea in the morning, and we have beautiful sunlight coming in from the east in the morning, or an aperitif in the evening. In the last 20 years of her life, because she was ill, she had a maiden companion named Cécile Bernard. Of course, she was a French woman. Cécile has a write-up, I think you have it in your binder, of her meeting with Caroline, their exchange and not great meeting and exchange of views, how they rather evolved. It's hard to talk about this a little bit because Cécile is still alive and was reluctant to talk about any of the things to do with Caroline. But it seems like when they first met, there were some issues. But over time, they became closer and actually became good friends. And again, we were together for 20 years with Cécile looking after Caroline. If you don't have that in your documentation, let me know and I'll find it for you so you have it.
Cecile's last name is what again?
Bernard.
V or B?
B.
Okay.
As you look
I
around,
know the French name.
Right. As you look around this space, every room has so many things to talk about. I can introduce you to the Faradays of the family here. This is Henry McKean Faraday, who in the Lilac Girls novel is referred to as by his starch white collar. His wife, Eliza Mitchell Faraday, mind me. Eliza Mitchell-Faraday with her young child Caroline on her lap, and a woman named Mama, lost it, Caroline's grandmother, who had a French family affectation name like, gosh, I've lost it, so I'll try to find it for you again. But she seems to be the person who's responsible for a lot of the hand stitching in the house. Caroline knew how to sew. Her mother knew how to sew. Women of this social class and this period would sew. This is something they did. If you watch Downton Abbey, you remember that Cora of an evening would sit there with her embroidery hoop, you know. And when they did that kind of work, they had results. They didn't just, sit there and they do samplers.
Put a sampler on the
But there were other things that they came away with, and we'll see that in the library.
Is this